Yeah, our great team today. So Robin Thomas, head of the global technical proposals at OneTrust. It is a very interesting organization. They're sort of unique in the marketplace, and that provides their own challenges when they're running proposals. Graham Rotelli, as we mentioned before, is the director of global bids and proposals at Seismic. If you haven't heard of them, check them out. Major organization doing a lot of good work out there. And then, of course, I'm going to be your MC today. I'm one of the PI co-founders. I'm the owner of BKGM Consulting. We're a bespoke response firm. We have advised companies on how to move to a global stance, but I'm a novitiate in this area. And so I'm really looking forward to some of the information that's going to come out of Graham and Robin. All right.
Okay, hey, Ben, I'm going to grab the controls back real quick so we can welcome Robin back to the screen, because I just need to change something real fast. So go ahead and complete your slide, and we will be back momentarily. And thanks so much to everyone for all your patience. Technical issues are really exciting, so I appreciate you.
All right. So as we know, as mentioned before, of course, we are no longer living in a world where you bid to your local city. Now, I think today my company alone is bidding in like 13 different countries, and I'm having to deal with both local individuals and core teams, support groups, or SMEs in different states and different countries. And so there are certainly some challenges in doing so. And so we've assembled, because we've had a few of these questions inside the PI community, we've assembled this host of experts to kind of talk us through some of the things. And so with that in mind, why don't I hand it over to you guys to just do a quick introduction, and then we can move into some of our early discussion points. So Graham,
why don't you go first?
Yeah.
All right, everybody can hear and see me?
We can see you, Robin.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So first of all, thank you, Ben and Catherine and Graham here, and everybody who's part of this webinar today. I would say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are streaming from the world right now. My name is Robin Thomas, and I head the global technical proposal team here at OneTrust. I've been in this proposal world for more than 13 years now. It's fun, and definitely I'm truly excited to be here, and we'll have fun today.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Robin. I have been in the proposal landscape for about 14 years, working with a lot of different companies that some were very, very local. And then as my career kind of grew with much larger global organizations. So I think there's definitely some similarities to local and global, as well as some intricacies to global that are always good to understand. So happy to be here, talk with everybody today, and look forward to seeing some of the questions that come out of this later.
All right, so that's our intro portion. So let's get right into some of our quick discussion points. We did get some submitted questions via the Google Forms, and I'll kind of try to pop those in there as we get to the relative sections. So I guess maybe just scope out for us what your global team looks like in both the organizations. Like, are we looking at a situation where there's a core group in one area, and then kind of there are individuals working in other areas, or are there individual teams set out throughout the organization? Like, have you built your global team, and then how do you the follow-on question, of course, becomes like, how do you communicate with them? How do you manage them? So how about I hand it over to Robin first?
Sure. So the way that the team is structured at OneTrust here is we have team members in North America, presence in EMEA, and have a center in APAC. And the team is pretty much scaled out, reporting to local as well as globally in an umbrella fashion, where team members are local, working on projects globally, as well as supporting very local bids as well.
Okay. Is it similar with you, Graham, or?
I would say from a Seismic perspective, we are a little bit smaller. The team is growing currently. The business as a whole supports APAC and EMEA. More specifically, we are really headquartered from the US side, but the company that just came from Hitachi Vantara, we were massive. Obviously, our company was owned and headquartered in Japan. So we had proposal writers all around the globe. So I've seen both situations, but I prefer, if I'm going to be managing in the US, to kind of have that be the hub, the head station, and then be able to, help produce and guide outside of there.
Okay. So you're saying that with your specific structure for seismic, or just your preference, that you prefer. So one of the things that we hear sometimes talked about is the hub and spoke model. So like there's a central team somewhere, and then they support regionally with expertise. But like someone in the local area actually like responds to the bid, but like the hub supports them with access. Is that sort of how you plan to set up, or?
So I would say we're more follow the sun in that respect, but I like to have the larger group where I'm stationed, because I think it gives me more of a sense of where we're seeing success and areas that we need to work on. If for example, if my whole team was in Australia, I'd really have to restructure my work-life balance to make sure that I was up in the middle of the night so I could support them and things like that. But just from a management perspective, I like to have the more central group located in the US.
Okay, fair enough. And so then going back to it, you mentioned follow the sun, of course. So for those people who aren't necessarily in the tech space, follow the sun was often coined for support, and the idea that you would have support teams spread throughout the continent, and then wherever your customer was, they could get access to a support team that was basically in the middle of their workday. And so with proposal management, of course, that brings up this kind of interesting efficiency where there's a possibility of like one team starts on a project and another team kind of completes it over the course of the evening, and then the new team rolls into work the next day and they see that there's been progress made on their proposal even without them being there. Now, had both of you always been in follow the sun though, or have you tried? Sorry, like I know, Robin, you were indicating that you've been in a follow the sun right now.
Yeah. So again, it depends on, since we deal with global bids, it depends on the type of bid as well, especially on the larger opportunities where you are the time crunch and everything is due yesterday and you have a lot of work in front of you to finish it. Follow the sun is the best way. I look at follow the sun in a very layman term is the ability that allows us 60 to 20 human work hours in 24 hours turnaround time, right? So you're able to put like 16, 20 like human hours in 20 hours of your time is what, gives us that bandwidth to perform. There are bids that's completely run by the proposal writers, managers regionally, locally, and that's completely fine. But the ones that's big, that needs more data, or maybe a primary and a secondary, we need two proposal writers for a reason, one for a strategy perspective, second from the content perspective. In those scenarios, we do follow sun, where we can do more in less time.
Okay, excellent. But do you are there challenges with the follow the sun model? Do you ever find that I guess, how do you communicate with your teams to effectively hand off work? Or is it that you're so structured that that's not a problem? I guess my worry would be that people would lose the thread, and then I would get a whole bunch of garbage coming up to me the next morning when I logged in.
Yeah. So that's the biggest challenge on how you structure your follow the sun model. And the biggest piece that ties things together is communication, right? Like what kind of communication standard do you have? What kind of tools do you use? Because your instruction when you go to bed depends completely on the next 8 hours of productivity on the other side of the globe, right? So here is where your SharePoints, your proposal tools really come into place, because it's live data. It's not sitting on somebody's laptop or on somebody's server that you do have to access. This is live document, and we are able to collaborate like live on a project. So communication is a key, especially text communication, whether it's an email, Slack, IMs, whatever, or a proposal tool where everything is managed and everything is real.
Okay. So Graham, going to you then, Robin just mentioned technology and communication as being a key piece of this. I don't know how you run your proposals, but is there a need then to bring the entire team together to like strategize before you start off, or do you just rely like heavily on the technology to get that communication across?
The way that we typically operate proposals, there's one proposal manager that leads everything. So when it comes to the follow sun model, the way that we see it as an advantage is if I have a proposal manager that's in the US working with somebody in Germany, well, I know there's a 6 or 7 hour work difference depending on what time of year it is. So we structure how we work on our proposals a little bit differently. We tend to have our meetings in the morning, and then we know that the end of our day, we can finish up stuff that the rep or somebody would need to take over their next morning or our middle of the evening. So kind of like Robin was touching on before, you get a longer workday. It's not an 8-hour workday anymore. You get 12, 13, 14 hours out of that day working on, the proposal together with the support groups in the home country. So to me, there's a lot of advantages to it. The only disadvantage I see is when there's the extreme, opposite side of the globe. I think those are difficult to say, we're going to have somebody from the US work on a bid from Australia. I think those time zones are probably too far apart. So in the extreme situations, it's good to have somebody local that can manage and run it and then come to you only for, little spot checks here and there, but not necessarily to provide major support.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So I'm actually going to return because I jumped ahead because I was so excited about Follow the Sun. That's my dream, is to get more of my clients to follow the sun model. But we did have a question from someone. I think it kind of applies to this slide. And it was, how much do you need to allow different regions to adjust your proposal process? For example, we have a lot of African Middle East deals that are a little looser in the process than, for example, our EU deals. And I think for the EU deals, they're referring to like the dual submission processes that go into like trying to get an EU bid across the line. So I don't know, hold up your hand. Does anyone want to kind of touch on that?
I don't mind going first on this one.
Sure.
So you talk about culture shock in general. I think a lot of it comes down to one, what do you model for your team as a leader? So I think you need to be more empathetic in your communication with each person when it comes to the different regions that they're in, and everybody needs to have a clear understanding of their role. So for me, the differences you'll see in country, I rely on the bid and proposal managers to teach me about that country because I don't live there, I don't know it. And I know if I'm working on, a deal for someone in Germany, I know it's going to be rigorous. We're going to have hard deadlines. We're going to run that bid like a real efficient steamship, and if I'm working with somebody in APAC, typically a lot of those, that's about who you know. So it may be a little bit less about the content, but more about, this guy knows this person and he's giving us this feedback. So even though it may not be in that proposal, we need to, consider that when we're responding. So it depends on which country it is, but I like to kind of find out from the people that lived here to say, what do you know? How have you seen these be successful? And then start trying to kind of build like a baseline for each area.
Okay. Interesting. And Robin, how about you with your experience?
I would definitely echo what Graham said. It's completely about understanding, like living in one space and understanding what's going on the other side, right? And this is where the way I work is to bring that inclusive culture in your team, that everybody is open to share their view, their process, tell us what's better and what works best for them, and build that process holistically, listening to everybody and say like, okay, this is what the baseline is, but we'll make deviations based on the region. But to truly understand and bring that inclusive culture is that we are listening to what he's saying, and we would go that route if that makes sense, and not imposing one structure, one process across the globe. So a lot of listening, a lot of learning.
A lot of listening, a lot of learning. And so that's fascinating. And so, I mean, like what I'm hearing is kind of this, I'm going to build some sort of basic framework, and then I'm going to, dress it with the local regionality and the concerns that they have around their specific needs for a bid. But with that in mind, then do you record that somewhere, or does it just become kind of like an understanding within your proposal team? Like, how do you codify that information?
Yes, so it's interesting because, and I'll tell this, that one person asked me the other day that, hey, you are in this proposal for a long time, don't you get bored, right? And my answer was that that's the beauty of proposal, because every proposal is different, right? It looks like a simple RFP document to you, but it's totally has its own flavor. So we do have SOPs, which is a little bit region centric on, basic protocols for those regions, but not a very hard rule that, hey, if it's like this, you have to follow this process, but a little bit of guidance, a little bit of guideline, and what we need to expect, what we need to cross check for regions. But it's a standard process across the globe. Little deviation is based on the need, but we do have some SOPs that kind of give you those guidelines, not a hard and fast rule.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
and to even touch on those SOPs, there's often times where for certain cultures or certain areas, you don't want to use certain terms. So those would be the places where I would find that you want to have, like Robin mentioned, the SOPs can guide you, but there are some hard and fast places where it's like, this is not well received if you reference the company like this, or if you reference support in this way. You want to make sure that you're inclusive of how they would best receive that. So it's, it seems less like this was done out of country and more like this is a response that's going to be managed and supported how they understand it.
Okay, interesting. So is that along the lines of like just like specific terms, or are we actually looking at like, well, in this case, we're going to tone down our sales language. We're going to be less braggadocio, more
Yeah,
like.
it's a little bit of both. And even like, it's writing a cover letter, how you address the cover letter to somebody. You look at the Japanese culture, and it's a very hierarchical culture that is all about respect. So you want to make sure that you're talking to the correct person and not maybe saying things holistically because they may feel that you're not giving them the attention that they would look for. So there's a lot of little nuances like that.
Okay, interesting. All right. So I will quickly move on to the next one, but providing instructions. And we briefly touched on this when we discussed Follow the Sun. And I said, hey, I'm worried about getting garbage the next day. But it sounds like both of you are relying very heavily on your tool usage. Are there other ways? Like, do you need like a joint kickoff meeting or anything like that to make this happen?
Yeah, I can go first here. So instruction is very important, especially when you're dealing with follow sun model, because as I say, like your instruction or what do you see in the next 8 hours totally depends on how that outcome would be, right? So proposal tools are the good place because it's very clear, where the other person have stopped, the notes, the comments, which section has been completed, what needs to be done, as well as like having a process internally on the whole proposal lifecycle gives a very clear understanding on what happens after this step, right? So it's again, when you build these processes for the team, these processes are not for specific region, but this is completely global process. Now we might change deviations based on the region, but the process is the same. So having a very unified process, team members knowing their role, and a very good central point of location. Maybe it's a SharePoint, maybe it's a Word doc, or proposal tool, doesn't really matter. But a very good thought on what the outcome needs to be and what next 8 hours look like is the key.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, and I would say from my perspective, I lean on the side of technology. I think there are positives and negatives. No tool is going to solve all your problems. So as long as, like Robin is saying, you instruct your team, you have them know that baseline of here's how we work through these opportunities, here's how we work through these proposals, then you should be getting the, correct information back. And you even mentioned, you're worried about getting up the next day and being like, oh gosh, what I got back was just awful. I think that comes down to, well, your processes aren't clear, or potentially, you don't know the person as well that you gave that assignment to. Maybe you gave them something that was outside of their zone. Maybe you gave them something that was, unclear to them. And, depending on the culture, they may not have felt comfortable enough to speak up. So I think it's, again, about fostering that community that you have on your team and making sure that everyone is supportive of one another. So they don't just rely on one person to get the information from, but they can reach out for support to no matter where they go. And that typically allows you to get a better product the next day once you kind of wake up and see what they've done.
Fair enough. So All right. And does that apply both to your proposal team and to your SMEs? Like, do you have follow the sun SMEs as well? Like, hey, you know, if you didn't get the answer from North America today, you need to like go to this, or do your companies assign like, hey, these SMEs have been assigned to this bid, you can only talk to them for this 8-hour period? Like, is it?
No, we have SMEs that will work through the specific questions and opportunity, but the general understanding and the way that we've positioned it within the business is our team, if they reach out to you, it's for a specific reason. It's not to bother you. It's not to, waste your time. We need some help. And we have a very good company culture at Seismic, and everybody's always willing to help. So if someone's online, if someone's available, if there's a larger group email where you're just saying, help, anyone that sees this first, can you support? I think that's part of company culture, not just your proposal team, but we let them know we're reaching out for a reason. And it's because we've done our research, we've searched for something, we couldn't find it. And, we'd appreciate the help.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of same here. We don't have the luxury of follow the sun SMEs, but our SMEs are like, they know in the middle, in the beginning of the game that they are involved, or they will be involved, and their help is needed. So they are kind of prepared, and we kind of use them throughout the whole process. But yeah, as of today, I would love to get that.
Okay. Perfect. So let's talk tools then, because we've touched on them a couple times. Like, are you using some tools right now for global teams that you love? Like, is there something out there that you're like, yep, hey, if you're a global organization, this is kind of the baseline, or these are the things that you definitely need? Anyone?
I don't know if there's a perfect global tool. And the reason I would bring that up is because there are many countries that have different workers' councils that don't allow you to do specific things. So for example, we used a proposal software at my last company, and we had a very hard time getting that tool into the German side of the organization. They have a workers' council that does not allow you to track anything that they do. And that's a part of their, a lot of their different businesses. So you say, well, we're not looking to track, we're not looking to do this thing. But if your tool has reporting functionality, you're going to struggle to do that, because reporting means you can see what someone's doing. And that's the basic sense that they look at it. So I think it's important, if you have countries that can potentially veto a tool coming in, you need to be a part of that workers' council and then work to come up with a plan to say, we're not going to do this, or we'll turn this feature or functionality off. But in my opinion, I like all proposal groups to have some type of tool. I think we're way past the days of having SharePoint folders to find things, or to say, oh, I'm going to email this to you. You need something to help progress and help maintain the efficiencies that you're trying to develop. Otherwise, in my opinion, there's a lot of time that's wasted doing the same processes over and over again that could be done in 5 minutes with the proposal tool, but now takes you an hour because it's a very manual process.
Okay. So yeah, what I'm hearing there is a desire for a proposal tool. Do you have some names that you want to throw out? Like, I know that like, for example, one of the companies I'm working with right now is using an Ombud global tool. I have another company that I'm working with that uses Lupio. I have another company that has a very structured teams environment. So each proposal gets its own team, and then like all the chat, all the discussion gets housed there for reference when the project goes live, so that people can look back on the history. So how about anything along those lines with you?
So we use Lupio currently. I think RFPIO, Lupio and RFPIO, in my opinion, are two of the best. You will have to pay a little bit for them if you need to save money. From a functionality standpoint, I think Qvidian is relatively strong, but it's more of a basic tool. Ombud is good, but they only typically support smaller organizations. So if you're global, I would almost guarantee you're kind of outside the realm of Ombud. We ran into that at our last company, and we liked what it could do, but they need to grow. So they just flat out told us, we'd love to respond, but unfortunately, if you guys go outside the US, we're not going to be able to support, especially if you have more than a few hundred users. So.
Okay, fair. Robin,
I would just echo that. If you're trying to manage global teams, RFPIO and Lupio would be your best options. Qvidian is good. It's just that Qvidian needs to be more scoped out to kind of have more functionality RFPA and Loopio has. There's another tool called Proposify. I know they are getting in the market, trying to expand their footprint. I'm not sure where they are today, but we did evaluate them at my last firm. But yeah, RFPA and Loopio as of today.
Yeah. We actually, I mean, I'll put a pin in it, but we had a talk with the VP of marketing at Proposify recently because they wanted to talk to us about our ChatGPT series, because supposedly they have some interesting use cases along that. But all right, well, that was great. So with the follow the sun model, I think we've kind of beaten this to death, but does anyone want to make a push for like why the hub and spoke works well? Or have you tried it and you just decided, no, I'm going follow the sun because of the efficiencies? Or
yeah, I have tried that in the past. When I was at Hitachi, that's where we started with, and we quickly just moved on from it. Again, to be able to get that longer workday, from a proposal perspective, especially when you're trying to get, some pretty critical deals out the door, it's hard to kind of beat getting extra, call it free time, getting extra time in your day to know someone's working on something while you're sleeping and you can keep flowing and moving forward. Getting a 16-hour workday on one project is pretty awesome.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yep, same here. I would just echo what Graham said. Hub and spoke. I got into the scenario at my last company where they had to implement hub and spoke for a region just because of the data issues. So they had regulations that data shouldn't leave the country, and so they had to build that hub and spoke so that the hub controls the spoke and the data. But apart from that, follow the sun is the go.
Okay, interesting. So, but before we actually launched the webinar, Robin, you and I were talking, and you mentioned that a lot of it is driven by your business organization structure, and you said that SaaS really comports well with follow the sun. But like I could see a challenge if you have a lot of different products or regional rollout implementations that would make it a little bit more difficult for someone in, a proposal writer in the Philippines to be responding to a product that was made for like US companies or something like that. So
yeah. So again, it depends on your org. It depends on the product and the region as well. For SaaS, it's more easier just because the software can be sold 80% anywhere, unless it has some kind of data regulations or any regulations from the country perspective. But there are companies that's very product specific regionally. So those products are only built for the region. In those scenarios, hub and spoke might be a good fit just because every expert lives in that region and it's not going across. And maybe that's the best efficient way depending on how many RFPs you do and what really the business is.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm not gonna belabor that, but let's talk about what people are really concerned about. How do we make these teams work? I mean, they're spread all across the world. They're in different time zones. I'm not going to have FaceTime with them. Like this just seems like a little bit of a management nightmare. So let me know. Am I wrong? Is it just
you say nightmare? I think it's awesome.
Okay.
Figuring out what individuals are kind of all about, what drives them, what excites them about the proposal process, learning about their families and everything else. There's so many new things that as a leader of a global organization, having a team spread across the globe that you can learn about. It's so fun. And even in the fact of there's also a lot of process improvements that you see because it's many countries, they have just a completely different way of doing something. Look at, even if you want to dumb it down to like food, well, what we eat is very different than what many other countries eat, but it still gets the job done and it's delicious in different ways. So I look at proposals as it's a very eclectic thing. You can have your teams have their expertise in their country, but you also need to be very, very inclusive of how they do things, why they do things specific ways. And there's oftentimes big overlap with, somebody in Australia does something for a very specific reason. Great. That can be something that affects the whole team. And it needs to be shared with the entire group to figure out, is this a better way to do things? Or is this a more convincing way to structure a document or, create a win theme or whatever the case is. So it brings so much diversity, in my opinion, that I feel like global proposal teams almost are innately more successful if they're run well and encouraged to share their thoughts.
Okay. So I'm hearing that what you're saying is that you're going to leverage the diversity of your organization to like build a better process, to build a better mousetrap, so to speak. Does this mean that Graham is waking up at 2 a.m. for his one-on-one with?
Yes, you should, I would highly recommend having either senior proposal managers or some team leads or leadership in your main areas. I don't know of proposal teams that are so heavily structured in a lot of countries. I know typically most of them have a hub, and then you're going to have 6 or 7 people in the UK, you're going to have 6 or 7 people in Japan. So it's good to have somebody that you trust and that they understand that their role is to be able to provide you the feedback that you need so you can continue to give guidance. But you're running that team, you need to be involved with that team, you need to be a part of them and show them that you care about what they're doing. And yeah, that times, means you're getting up early in the morning, and maybe you're taking a nap in the middle of the normal day. But that's kind of how that job works a little bit.
Yeah, and that's fascinating. So what I'm hearing is like a little bit of like regional leadership or regional supervision, even with your kind of follow the sun model. So
yeah.
That's okay. That's interesting. So how about you, Robin? Do we have a similar, like, everything's fine, I flipped the switch and like my global team was ready to go, or?
No, so let me tell you this: like, if you have a global team, and if anybody in the attendees panel here is planning to build a global team, do it. I mean, it's really awesome. You will meet and you will be a part of so much a diverse group. It's really awesome to have different people, DNI in there. You learn a lot. You learn a lot, and not about only culture, but the work process, and the way of thinking, the way of success, and it's an awesome feeling. And second thing that I love really about this global team is coverage. So on the days where North America is on a holiday, you still have some kind of backup somewhere covering in case something burns down in EMEA, right? Or somewhere else. So coverage is a really good thing, and people really help each other to kind of cover when the others are off or on a holiday, or maybe they're enjoying their vacation. So it's a very good process to have that global coverage. Now, in terms of you being a leader on how you manage your time, one piece of advice I'll give to anybody who's planning to get to the next phase is make sure, even though you have your regional lead or regional supervision, make sure you have a connection with your team members as well. Your report -1, that builds a very strong relationship in the team, because somebody across the globe should always feel that you are there, or you are approachable, and you are there for the team, versus having just a dotted line and not even knowing what kind of person you are, what kind of strategy do you hold. So global team is very rewarding, and it's awesome.
So and bear with me, because I don't know where you're at in your positions, but like, do you advocate for headcount in specific regions, or is it that a sales function? Like, sales basically says, hey, we're going to be doing more proposals, you probably need more people, and you should shove someone into this time zone or something like that. Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, for my company, speaking specifically, the organization trusts that we're going to give the proper guidance to where we need to go. So a lot of it will fit the corporate structure. So if we're looking to branch out into new areas, yeah, eventually we're going to need a proposal team there. But if we don't have a sales team there yet, then I'm not pushing for someone to get into that country.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, same here. It's kind of in line with the corporate structure. So say, for example, if you're trying to build a new hub somewhere, you would definitely want your presence, your writer presence, to be there to support the sales and the SMEs there. But yeah, if you don't have anybody, you're not going to put somebody in the middle of an island.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So, and that comes up with hiring though in different regions. Like, do you rely on your regional leadership to do that? Or like, how do you make your first hire in a new region? Like, just put an ad out and hope for the best, hopefully you have experience? Like, how do you
newspaper ads? That's what we're doing. We're real cutting edge. No, I'm just kidding. No, ways that I've seen it be successful in the past is I think there's a lot you can learn from different areas. So me being in the central time zone in the US, it doesn't mean I can't go north or south. Canada's an option, Mexico's an option. Those are easier to manage because they're in the same time zone as me. So I can still get some of those cultural benefits without necessarily having an office there. And a lot more companies, I mean, obviously since COVID, are very flexible about where you work and support that. So some of it comes down to what potentially the cost of the country would be, how HR classifies that. But I want the individual to be close enough to the sales group to be able to support them for 80% of their day. So if it goes lower than that 80%, meaning their hours don't overlap by 80%, then to me, it's not as much of an efficiency. It's more of a hassle for sales to be able to work with that person because they can't access them when they need to access them. And I don't want to burn out my proposal writers, so I don't require them to do weekends. We don't want them to have to get on in the middle of the night, only but the rarest of circumstances.
Okay, that makes sense to me. So do you find it challenging though? Like, when you are hiring globally, are you specifically looking for like the regional differences? Like, hey, I need you to bring the procurement knowledge from your area into this team.
And sorry, Robin, I have one more thing and then I'll let you go. For me, my hiring process is very specific on behavioral. So I think everybody has fallen into the proposal role. It's something I say often. Nobody goes to college for proposals. It just doesn't exist. So typically you find this position out of an interest or a need of some sort. So I don't necessarily look to hire somebody that has all the proposal experience and expertise. I look to somebody that has a positive attitude, is a good communicator, that understands, this is a team effort and they need to speak up so we can support them, because some countries, that's not their culture, that's not their way of life. They are supposed to just follow the rules. So that, I would say, is when I'm hiring, are more the behavioral questions that I look to ask in certain areas. But I think when you focus on the behavior of somebody, and if somebody's a good cultural fit for you and your team, I think you really can't lose no matter what country that you're in.
Okay. Robin?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say that when you're planning for hiring, it's more of like, hey, understanding where you can find the best resource and what kind of task that you're planning for the role, right? Especially if you're looking for a content manager, or if you're looking for somebody to run the content side or the strategy side, you want that person to be close to sales. You want that person to work with the sales all the time, and you pick your regions accordingly. There might be areas where your corporate company is focused on one region. You might try to find the best fit in that region, and you might go that route as well. So it's kind of happy balance between what the company strategy is and where the sales is, and how do you find the best role in those regions.
Okay. So two different approaches there. What I'm hearing is some attributes are universal, and I kind of hire for that, like the behavioral aspects, the key points that are going to make them good in their role. And then another one where it's like, hey, I'm driven by the need of the organization to kind of structure what I request from the marketplace. But that again is kind of universal for the region that I'm going into, or some such. All right, so interesting how you two tackle that. I'm not sure who put this question in, but yeah, are there, like, again, I don't know how your organizations are structured, but with your global organization, is the budget held by you globally and then distributed by region, or is it, that you're an adjunct to the sales region or something like that? Like, how does that work? How do you determine like your resource usage in each area and what you have to play with?
I'll go, Graham, is Laura, but it's your turn now. So, for me, it's global, and that's the new way companies are looking into in terms of budgeting now. So things have changed a lot post-pandemic. Before, it was more of a regional control, regional finance, regional numbers, which used to like add up to the final bottom global numbers. Now, especially post-pandemic, when everything went remote, all companies are, or majority companies are looking from a very high level bird's eye view to see where the strategies go. Can we implement what we're implementing on this side of the globe, the other side as well, for better efficiency, or where we can have more resources supporting, or which region do we have to grow, right? So based on that, now you see a lot of companies getting into this global model of operation across the globe versus putting them in small buckets earlier. So for me, it's a global budget and a global number that I run with.
And yourself?
Yeah, very similar. So we have a budget that's really on myself to kind of position to the business where we need to grow into next. But because the team is, will report up to the same reporting structure, it doesn't matter if they're in, the UK or Japan supporting those sales teams, because ultimately it's about the bigger organization. We'll look at how their proposals are, the quantity that they get and everything else to determine, do we need more support? Do we need less support? Whatever the case is. But when it comes down to managing that budget, it's pretty centralized with the proposal group itself. And then we're supposed to give the guidance to the business. And it's nice. I realize that's not always common, but it's nice that, our business respects that and doesn't try and say, well, we're going to have 10 sales reps, so you need to do something about that. They ask for advice rather than demanding.
Sure. So with that in mind from the two of you then, when you're saying a global budget, does that mean that you have final authority about whether a deal proceeds in that region or not? Like whether you're going to bid on it and the level of support that you're providing for it? So,
yeah, 100%. And again, I don't know what's more common, because in my career, having worked for 6 or 7 organizations, I've seen this 50-50 split where proposal teams are well respected within the organization. You have your qualification process, you have the process to say, we're missing this seems like a big gap, we're not going to move forward. And then you have other organizations that just tell you what to do, and you're just kind of this factory that kind of keeps churning out responses, and there's not a lot of value to that. We know the earlier point is the way to go. So we have that here at Seismic. It's one of the things that we're very proud of, that we can give our advice and it's listened. There's always going to be pushback. There's always going to be sales reps or managers or whoever that say, no, this is a must-win deal. And we just say, well, convince us, your sales, convince us. Why is it worth our time? Because we're a valued resource. It's the same way you can't have legal do every red line for every document that comes in. They need to prioritize what's most critical. So if they disagree, we're open to listen and open to discuss in a very, amicable fashion, but we need them to let us know why we're missing something.
Okay, interesting. So Robin, when a deal comes in, then is it incumbent upon sales to identify it to the global team, and then your team scales it down to, whoever is relevant to need it, or? Yeah.
So since we're a growing company, we are transforming from the old habit of hate to lose everything. So that's a mentality when you're growing, right? Okay, everything is important, right? So and if everything is important, nothing is important. So we are transforming that. It's been a couple of quarters now into a strategy where we are really looking at the RFPs. Where we are going after the win teams. Where we are doing a good no-go decision, and then once it comes to me, it's a global resource allocation from there. It's not that if the deal is North America, it has to be run in North America, or if the deal is in EMEA, it has to be run in EMEA. It's a global lead. Anybody can help it and do it in the turnaround time we have.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be really critical, especially considering the volume of bids that your company faces. How interesting. Yeah. All right. So I mean, touchy subject, and we had a couple questions on this, but I'll just kind of get some broad overview from you, and then we can discuss other stuff. So oversight of your teams globally. We heard you might be getting up at early evenings to see people. Robin said it's very important to maintain that relationship with your hierarchy -1. So how do you help more junior resources or newer resources when they're not co-located with you?
I would say 2 things around this. When I was a part of poorly run organizations that didn't have a good culture, oversight was a term that scared me, because oversight felt like micromanagement. It felt like somebody telling me what to do. It felt like, I hope I'm doing everything right so I can get the job done. When companies have a positive culture, oversight, it's kind of like a family. Oversight becomes a part of what everybody does, and everyone understands that we're all here to help to make sure we get the best product out the door. So in my position, I don't want to have to worry about if somebody is doing well. To me, oversight, the most critical piece that comes down to my job, because I know it's a supportive group, is am I giving, that person the training they need? Am I giving them the support they need to understand specifics of a deal, grow in their career or grow in their proposal career, whatever that ends up being? That's how I would look at oversight. And then if I'm not in that country, I will take the time to, get up during, their normal hours to make sure I can support them. If I have if APMP has some trainings or some webinars or something that I can send them to get them started, and then we can see how they're progressing, then I can, structure that, and it doesn't have to be consistent. But I'm looking to have people that work on my team that are, motivated and want to do a good job. You very quickly see that when somebody comes into your team. You're not going to hire everybody perfect every single time. Every once in a while, a bad apple sneaks through. But and I feel like in proposals, somebody that can't manage proposal, can't answer questions, can't get the job done, it becomes apparent very, very quickly. And oversight is almost, it's more of, can this person be performance managed to a position of positivity, or is this just not the right position for them? And how can I help them find something that better fits their skills?
Okay.
Yep. Same here. Like when I see, or when I think about oversight, the first step is how are we onboarding them? Because especially with the global teams, the thing that we have to be very careful is that from day one, we have to make sure that there's a proper onboarding plan for them. They know they have all the tools, all the techniques, all the skills to do the job, as well as a proper PDP for them, a professional development plan as well, so that they know what they did today, what tomorrow looks like, and what they have to do to get to the next stage, right? And that foundation really helps every team member to kind of understand what the whole scenario of the job is. And having a buddy system or a paired system internally helps them to reach out to that senior or a lead or maybe the same level person to really help and kind of have that to and fro relationship to grow and kind of learn from there as well. Okay.
So again, some slight differences. Like what I'm hearing here is a connection to a senior individual is critical, like so that the person feels comfortable rolling into it. But I'm also hearing, like let's start them off with some basic training, and then we'll check in on a regular basis to make sure that they're achieving their goals. So that works out very well. But we had another question, and this was around. So I don't think I'm phrasing this properly, but the idea is they say that they had an issue with a junior individual who was frontlining a proposal. So they were handling the clarifications between themselves and the client was making requests that were too hard for the team back in North America to respond to quickly. But the junior that was in the same time zone, I guess, as the customer, was indicating that, like, if we don't answer within this time, we are out of the bid. So that sounds like a regional difference. So they're basically saying, hey, my expertise says we have to be conciliatory to this client, and they're getting pushback from the SMEs in North America. So, like, where do we fall on that situation? Like, is this a situation where you have to restructure North America's expectations? Is this a situation where you have to advise, give some instruction to, like, the junior, hey, like, you have to build some pushback into the customer regardless of their culture or identity? Like, how do
I would say this ties back to your proposal planning process. So when you get an RFP in, and when you do a no-go, and when you establish your kickoff and your proposal plan, these elements of where things fall and which SMEs need to support and how are we going to go after this bid really helps to kind of clear that out. Because if one SME is saying somewhere, if I'm understanding the question correct, Ben, one SME is saying that we have to, and this region is saying no, that there's definitely a gap. So proposal planning is very, very important, and also a complete process where on how do we handle conflicts, right? If it's a regional conflict, who is the decision makers, and we have to identify those individuals on day one, and versus having different people giving different opinions throughout the whole process. So we have to identify those decision makers and the buyers in the whole process, and then come with a plan on the proposal versus going after everybody, and the people come with their own flavors. So
okay, so it sounded like that's coming back to process, like making sure that there are lines of authority that can like just make the judgment call, and then later on we'll discuss how to like build that in overall. So okay, interesting. All right, well, Graham, last thoughts from either of you. We have a few moments, and then I'm going to need to move on to closing it out. We are at the hour. Thank you so much for your time. But any comments from either of you about global teams in general? It sounds like you're both pro-global. So
definitely pro-global. Yes, I would say, regardless of country, I think it's just critical that you build a team and really that team culture of respect. And I think a lot of the issues that come about with proposal teams and sales teams, no matter what country it is, if it's not met with respect, then it can be met as hostile. And that's where a lot of these issues can kind of arise. So as a manager, it's important to know how somebody would prefer to be coached, how somebody would prefer to even be recognized for their different achievements. And I need to make sure that I'm vulnerable enough to know that I don't know everything, and be open and honest and ready to learn, and that my team members have that same perspective. But overall, pro global, I think it's a very fun way to go about your day, and there's so much that you can learn and grow as a business person and a everyday person.
all right, perfect.
yeah, I would just echo what Graham said. It's really rewarding to be a part of the global team. And the two things that I would say that you definitely have to do when you're dealing with global team is, one, you make sure we have a good diverse team. So diversity is very important. And second is all inclusiveness. You have to, every decision that you make as a leader should include every individual of your team, the broad individual, and taking their aspect as well, and not forcing one decision that it's benefited to some region only.
Yeah, fair enough. All right.